Up until that point, I was coaching people, but I was coaching everybody. When my father passed away, it kind of clicked because I saw how unhealthy he got in the last 10, 15 years of his life. He was into drinking, he was into smoking. I noticed that same pattern is very prevalent here in the United States. I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I have the expertise. I never thought I'm going to be coaching specifically guys. I thought I'm going to be involved in fitness, but I didn't know exactly in what kind of way.
Good morning, champ. Welcome to Chief here, the professional problem solver, coming to you live for another episode of The Overcomers. Today, I'm really excited because our guest is one of my dear friends, a fellow Bulgarian. His name is Ivan Cholakov, and many of you have seen Ivan. He's a member of this group. He had started the Spartan Dad Project, which is doing excellent. He's got hundreds and hundreds of great testimonies with fathers. He's really specific on helping fathers to live a healthier lifestyle so they could be around for their kids. Ivan actually lost his father tragically 2015 due to a heart attack, and that's what inspired him to change many people's life in a fatherless world in order to honor his dad. So I'm really excited to invite my friend on camera and to allow him to share his story and also his wisdom. If you guys are into fitness or healthy living, healthy lifestyle, nutrition, there's no one better than him to share his wisdom with you. So without further ado, my friend Ivan, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Velko. Appreciate it, brother.
Yes, it's such a great pleasure to have you on, and I know that you've been involved with different sports, combat sports, and fitness, and just being extremely active. You've done 75 hard million times, and that's kind of like your lifestyle. So I'm a big fan. The show has kind of like a trend. We invite men's men for guests, and you're definitely qualified. So I'm excited about learning more about your personal life, and I'm excited that you're willing to share that with all our viewers. By tradition, we start with one big question, which is share with us where do you come from, where were you born, and what are your parents? Who are your parents? What are some details about your upbringing, the place that you were born? And we also go back to grandparents. I feel that there's a ripple effect, and sometimes a generation is skipped, and a lot of the gifts and talents and skills are passed on through generations. So share with us a little bit about your grandparents, your parents, and the beginning of your life story.
Well, Velko, first of all, I really appreciate being on your show, man. It's an honor for me to be on your show. Really appreciate it. And I was born in Bulgaria. I was born in Bulgaria in a small town called Sambulisky, a very, very small town. And I grew up during communism. Back then, my parents were hardworking people. My father, who passed away in 2015, he was an entrepreneur. He had a small business, an ice cream factory initially, and my mother was working there as well. And my upbringing was very traditional, very old school. My father was a very disciplined person, and I grew up in a household that was very, very believing in God, in a very old school Christian household. And especially my grandparents, my grandmother was responsible to teach me in the faith and read me the Bible when I was 5, 6 years old. And everything there was really old school. It was discipline all the way. I used to go to school. I used to come back, write my homework, and go to work, help my father, help my parents. Everything was pretty much much more different than nowadays. But I'm extremely grateful by God's grace that I was brought up in such an environment. And yeah, I believe that is very, very important for the upbringing of every kid, especially a man. A very disciplined person to become and to just be brought up by such parents. So my childhood was like a normal childhood. I was into sports at a very young age. I trained wrestling. I trained a little bit of kickboxing, and now later on, I'm training Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But I was always into sports. I would play soccer all the time. I would run. My father could barely get me to get back home. I would be out all the time, training, lifting weights, and I was always into it, always into training. That's something that was very typical, I would say, for most Eastern European back then. And growing up, I did pretty much build up a passion about helping people, and I noticed that is a purpose that God has given me in terms of health and fitness. It's something that not only I'm passionate about, but something that I enjoy doing, especially with people. I love seeing them succeed. I love seeing people transforming themselves from point A, getting to point B, and becoming a totally different version. And that genuinely made me happy. But it wasn't until my father passed away when I actually realized that I need to specify who I'm helping with, and I prioritize helping dads, especially here in the United States. So more about my childhood, very simple childhood. We were a middle class family, obviously, hardworking family. I would go to school. I graduated in Bulgaria, then I moved to Germany for a year. I studied there nutrition. Then I went back to Bulgaria, and then eventually I came here in the United States back in 2012, where ever since I've stayed here, right? So everything was in Bulgaria very, very simple, as you know. It's very straightforward. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of perseverance. Life is not easy over there, but I believe with old school values and when you have God on your side, I mean, you cannot be broken. You're always going to persevere, and God will show you the purpose that He has for you. And eventually, God brought me to come into the United States, and by His grace, to create what I have created in terms of my coaching program and what I do. So I hope this answers your question. I mean, if you have something more specific, I'll be glad to elaborate on that.
The reason why I left Bulgaria and I came in 2004 was because there's possible things and impossible things in Bulgaria. Like there was some negative mindset, limited mindset, maybe from the communism or who knows where. But if you were to share a big dream or a big vision with a friend, the first reaction would be, "Are you crazy? This is impossible." And I was just, for some reason, I always felt that there's something more. There's a chance. I think that that's my gift from God to encourage myself and encourage others. And I always believe that there's more, and always had a growth mindset. What I wanted to learn more about is, tell me about the grandparents on your mom's side and the grandparents on your dad's side. What were they into? What were their gifts and unfair advantages, and just like, what are the traits that they had that you remember? What were they good at?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And just to kind of add to it, I agree regarding the limited mindset. It is something, I guess, brought up by the environment in Bulgaria. So I definitely can attest to that. Regarding my grandparents, I wasn't fortunate to meet my grandfather from my mother's side because he passed away before I was born. But my grandmother, she's 94 years old, and she
Oh,
was a big influence in my life, especially in terms of faith, because she's a Christian, and she always used to read to me from the Bible and tell me that God is very good, and you have to follow God, you have to follow Jesus. And even though I went away from that path in most of my childhood, that kind of sense of knowing God and knowing that there's God never left me ever. So she was a very big influence. She's a very calm woman, very happy all the time, very positive, always encouraging, and I believe that that's a big thing regarding her. She also is 94 years of age. I mean, it's not that easy at that age, but she was a big influence. In terms of my grandparents from my father's side, they're farmers. They have a farm. So I grew up there in the summer, and I used to help them with the crops and the plants there and the fruits. But they're very hardworking people, and they always try to instill in me the importance of hard work, because even my grandfather used to say to me, listen, talent is great, but like you got to understand that if you don't work on your talents, all that talent is irrelevant. There are plenty of talented people who don't really achieve much because they don't really put in the work. And this is something that stuck with me because I used to work on the farm. I used to help them all the time every summer. And I was maybe like 12, 13 years of age at the time. So yeah, they were big influence, very hardworking people. And again, you're spot on. Grandparents play a huge role, especially in Bulgaria, because they spend a lot of time with the kids. and they're a big influence. So I'm, again, very blessed to have a wonderful grandparents from both sides.
Yeah. Now, was your grandma Orthodox Christian or evangelist? What was she? What did she believe in? Because a lot of Orthodox Christians, and my experience with God, I was introduced to God at an early age, but we were not a very religious family. And one of my grandmas introduced me to God. I remember, and in the eighth grade, there was a priest that came to school, and I asked him, "What is God?" And he said, "Well, God is the voice you hear in your mind," which is not a good advice for a 14-year-old, because my voice was not always giving me the best suggestions. So for many years, I thought that my mind is God and created my own version of God. And what my observation was that, and you can probably, in conversations with Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox and Bulgarian Orthodox, there is this fear of God, and that comes before the love of God, and it's kind of like, I will never be good enough. Even in the Bible, it's like Rob. It's like it's always sinner. You're always a sinner, and you never get to the point where you're adopted and loved and healed and purified. So this was like my perception for many years, that just didn't help getting rid of shame or guilt. But there are those people that really emphasize on the New Testament, and they follow Jesus, and they realize Jesus is the only way. And those people usually are able to give you hope and allow you to get rid of the shame and the guilt, because that's why he died on the cross. So just understanding who God is, it's a big deal, because there's so many religious environments that build that fear and that never being good enough, kind of like the prodigal son. So that could be really painful experience for people and their relationship with God. And because of that perception, I ran away from him for many years, and I had to do a full circle and find him again. He never left. So what was your initial perception about God? Were you more focused on fear of God, and just be like, oh, I just sinned, he's gonna punish me? That's how Bulgarians talk. Like, if, oh, you did this to me, now God is gonna punish you, and he's not a punisher. So you understand what I mean?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because Christian Orthodoxy and Catholicism are very similar,
Hmm.
and they emphasize on works, the things that you
But
do.
the only, sorry to interrupt, but the only difference with Catholics is they bring the they bring the money, they do the confession, and they're good. Even the mafia guys used to be very involved in church, and they will build new churches. But with the Orthodox, it's kind of hopeless. There's no confession, there's no money, and it's like, man, it's kind of like this bitterness, because you could never be good enough following the law. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's I didn't have similar experiences, but back in the day, I had the concept of God as this man in the sky who is obviously helping us all the time, and I had a good perception of God, but I definitely didn't have any fear of God, which means any respect of God in terms of doing the right things all the time. And when we discuss God, it's really important to emphasize on what the Bible has to say, right? Because the thing about Christian Orthodoxy is that they don't really put so much emphasis on the Bible. They don't
Mhm.
see the Bible as the infallible word of God, and they add other books to the Bible and other traditions which have originated from pagan times. So when we talk about God, really is important to go what the Bible says, and the Bible clearly states that there is no condemnation for the one who is in Christ, which means that you're a new creation in Christ, and everything has passed, or the old has passed. You're a new creation, which means that yes, we have sinned and we're not perfect, but God forgives and God gives you hope in Jesus Christ, right? So it's important to have obviously understanding of the fear of God and understand that God definitely hates people who live in sin. He hates sinful acts doing on a consistent basis, but at the same time, He's always willing to accept you when you accept Jesus Christ and when you repent. And you have hope in Christ, you have future in Christ, you're overcomer through Christ, and there's no condemnation, right? So I believe that based on what the Bible teaches us is that the fear of God and the love of God, they go hand in hand. You can't really separate from them, because if you have fear of God, obviously you're going to love God and you're going to do the right things led by the Holy Spirit. So again, it's an interesting concept. It's all based on the Bible. But again, we have future, we have hope in Christ. You can't live in shame all the time. This is something that the devil makes people do, to live in condemnation. And there is no condemnation. The Bible is clear. You're a new creation in Christ, and you have a hope, and God will give you the strength to achieve anything you want to achieve according to his will. So, those kind of traditions, that they come from like the Pharisees, right? They try to put you
Yeah.
down based on your works. But if we go by our works, nobody's going to be saved, because the Bible is clear that we're all born in sin. So we need God's grace, and that grace is revealed in Jesus Christ, and through him we're a new creation. So that's what matters. We have to rejoice in that. Apostle Paul talks about in the Philippians that he who has begun a good work in you will finish it. And he encourages people, rejoice. And you got to know, Apostle Paul was in jail when he was writing that book. So he is telling us to rejoice and be joyful, and yet he is in jail. That shows you the attitude that the Christian needs to have. Always be joyful, always rejoice, regardless of the environment, regardless of what you're going through, because God is always good. So it's important to have that perspective based on the Bible, because again, traditions have polluted to a certain extent biblical teachings. And again, the most important thing as a Christian is, what does the Bible have to say?
Yeah, it's inevitable that if you don't read the Bible, you're going to create your own version of God, and that's dangerous, because I think a lot of people would say, "Oh, gee, you know, use." He said one of the sins is to use His name in vain, and a lot of people would think that this is like joking about God and stuff like that. But I think the biggest blasphemy is to not know who God is, and the only way to really know who He is by reading the living book, the Bible, which is an instruction I remember in my late teenage years and early 20s, when I was going through life making a lot of mistakes. I was like, I wish there was just a book that tells me what to do. So I read all these success books, and and there is a book, and it's so deep, and it's so living. When I accepted Jesus as my savior, I read the Bible back to back. The pastor didn't think that was a great idea. And during the Old Testament, I had some whoa, 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 hold on. Is that who God is? So then I read it chronologically. It made more sense. And now I actually have committed to read the Bible 4 times a day, every 6 hours. So I wake up with Psalms, then Proverbs. Then at noon, I have a meeting with God, and I read one chapter of the Old Testament. And at 6 p.m., I read one chapter of the New Testament. And this has been tremendous change in my life, because I don't allow distraction as easy and disobedience as easy. And it helps me really choose Him first and stay away from idols. But it's very interesting that yesterday somebody made a post. You don't need a church. You don't need to read the Bible so you can have a relationship with God. And I agree. The Holy Spirit is always present. But and I agree that maybe 80-90% of the churches are taking advantage of people's faith, and sometimes they would be the Pharisees that you're mentioning. I'm very fortunate to be in a good community, but the Bible is non-negotiable. If you really want to know who He is, and have and understand His heart, you have to read the Bible. I think it's just at least my experience. My experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who is this gentleman who said that, but I totally disagree, because if you don't read the Bible, you create a false idea of God according to
Yeah,
your own desires and understandings. That's a very dangerous game to play, right? Because you might even exalt yourself as God. So how do we know who do we know who God is? Is through His Word. And the reason people would say that sometimes is because they're not fully convinced that the Bible is literally the infallible Word of God. Because if you truly believe that, you will read it, and you will go by the Bible, right? So yeah,
yeah,
when people say that, this is a dangerous game, because again, you got to be careful. It's otherwise you just create a false image of God.
yeah. That's very dangerous. One thing you mentioned about your dad, which is really important with your relationship with God. Like our first impression of who God is our earthly father. It's our biological father, and because God is Father, so a lot of people have problems with God because of their relationship with their dad. So if you experience fear from your dad, you could potentially experience fear of God as well. So you've mentioned that the word discipline, and discipline, the definition of discipline is the practice of training people to obey rules or code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience. So, how was growing up with your dad? Was there a lot of punishment? Was there a lot of spanking?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, spanking was, yeah, there was spanking involved, but like not to the extreme. My father never beat me up like
Right.
bad, right? But the thing about my father is that I used to love him so much that I never wanted to disappoint him. And when I
Yeah.
saw him how he was disappointed when I would do something bad, that on his own would make me think about it, be like, I'll never do that again. Right? I mean, I remember I was maybe like 7 years old, and I went out of the house and I played soccer, and I stayed with my friend. Didn't tell him anything. There was no phones back then, and I came back 2 days later. He was very concerned. He spanked me, right, and he explained to me. He's like, "Hey, listen, I'm worried about you. Like, why would you do this?" Me and my mother were really worried, and then I realized, I was like, "Wow, I did really a lot of harm to my father. He's stressing about me, and obviously, I love my father, so I'll never repeat that again." But yeah, he was a disciplined person, but not those kind of disciplinarians where they have to enforce it with force, with physical punishment. He would just say the right things, show me what I have to do, and then I would do it. And because I love my father, I would never want to disappoint him.
Yeah. It's he led you by good example. So our fathers are first heroes. We subconsciously follow their example. So if it's a good example, sometimes not until we get older, if it's a bad example, it becomes a warning. You know the story about the alcoholic father who had two sons, and one of them became an alcoholic and blamed him for it, and the other one used it as an example, as a warning, and never touched alcohol, and was grateful that he didn't have to go through the hell his father and his brother are going to. So, what you're practicing today and what you're teaching other fathers to do is not discipline, but self discipline, which is the ability to control yourself and to overcome your own weaknesses and to overcome the doubt and to pursue the elite version of you physically, mentally, spiritually, despite all the temptations to abandon yourself. And that's why I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. And I just watch all of your success stories. Did you ever think about that when you were little? Was that like one of your dreams? One day when I become when I grow up, I'm gonna be leading men to the elite version of themselves.
No, actually, never thought about it. I always knew that I want to be involved in fitness, and that didn't happen until, especially regarding fathers, that didn't happen until my father passed away. But up until that point, I was coaching people, but I was coaching everybody. I
Hmm.
used to be a manager also at a gym facility. But when my father passed away, it kind of clicked because I saw how unhealthy he got in the last 10, 15 years of his life. He was into drinking, he was into smoking, and I noticed that same pattern is very prevalent here in the United States. So I decided, okay, I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I have the expertise how to coach guys, and especially regarding nutrition and training. Why wouldn't I put together something that can help them be accountable and is going to help them eradicate those bad habits over a consistent amount of time? And that's what I did. But yeah, it's something that occurred to me like around 2015 after my father passed away. Up until that point, I never thought I'm going to be coaching specifically guys. I thought I'm going to be involved in fitness, but I didn't know exactly in what kind of way when I was a kid.
And what was the first moment that you remember as a kid? When is the first conscious moment when you were like, all right, here I am, this is the world? How old were you? What is your first core memory?
That's a very good question. Probably was like, I don't know, like 5 years old.
Yeah.
4 5 years old. Yeah, was actually the first memory, and I'm serious. Is when there was the World Cup 1994.
Mm.
Was
How old are you?
I was 6 years old back then.
Six.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
So
was 6 years old and I was watching the World Cup, and I remember like everybody going crazy. And
yeah,
I remember that like vividly, like it was yesterday. So I would say that was my first moment, because the game back then was like overnight in the middle of the night. And I remember I waking up with my father watching the games.
it was wild. I was 10. It was wild. Those are like for our generation. That's like the highlight of our childhood.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's so yeah, that would be definitely the most vivid moment when I was a kid.
It was like the first time when we were truly united. You know, to be able to experience this on the street, people kissing, hugging each other on the streets, everybody celebrating. There were some people breaking stuff, but still, it was out of joy.
Yeah, yeah. It was amazing times. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, about your life, is there any moment in your life right now that you could go back to? But before I ask you this question, there is something in Bulgaria and just in the mindset of people that when you reach a certain age, you claim yourself as old. Have you noticed that? Like, oh, we're old now. We're 40 years old now. So we're supposed to have a big belly, and, we're not supposed to be playing sports. We're not supposed to be eating healthy. We're supposed to be just eating, meat and drink wine all day long and get drunk. And it's like people bench themselves. And even ex-athletes that have the foundation to continue to build, because I believe if you continue to build at 50 is when you're the strongest. If you live a healthy lifestyle at 50, you have the wisdom, you have uh, the best body, and you could be really good shape. All that residual reflects. And I just recently interviewed a guy named Mark Iron, who specifically focuses on people who are in that age 50, 60, and helps them boost their testosterone, not through medication or something like that, but just healthy living. And he was like active throughout his entire life. He had an episode of self-sabotage, but he's been going like that for the past 20 years. And right now he's at his peak when it comes to producing testosterone and muscle and body fat, and he just feels in great shape. So I think we're not supposed to be benching ourselves, but there's just like a belief system that is creeping over all people in Bulgaria. Have you talked to some of your friends? They're your age and they're like big belly and they're like, "Oh man, we're old now." You're not old. You're 40 or something like that. You're in your late 30s.
Yeah, it has to do with the mindset. It has to do with the mindset. I agree with that to a certain extent, that people grew up with that perception that after a certain age or after you get married, for example, that it's good, it's okay
Right.
if you let yourself go and all that kind of stuff. But this obviously it's nonsense. You never finish. You got to keep improving daily, and any body's metabolism doesn't slow down until you reach age of 60, 65, and even then you can still continue with the right, obviously, lifestyle. So this is all nonsense. I've noticed that. I've talked to guys from Bulgaria, and I can kind of attest to that they have that mentality. But again, it comes from the surroundings. It comes also from the people you hang out with. I mean, if you hang out with people
Yeah.
who have that mindset, you will inevitably build the same mindset. This is why it's critical to surround yourself with people who have a very open mindset, growth mindset, that they're never finished, that they want to get better, they never get complacent, and they have that self-improvement element in them. Because if you think you're done, you will be done. I mean, your perception is going to rule your reality. So you're not going to put action, you're not going to build the right habits, and you're going to feel like you're finished, but you're never finished. You're never finished. You can keep improving, keep training. So I agree with it. I agree with you. That is something that is common over there.
Yeah, it's amazing how your surroundings dictate your path and your destiny. It's so true that the people you surround yourself with, if you're with a bunch of drug addicts, it's only a matter of time until you become competitive and try that. And same way, if you're with a bunch of people that are taking care of their bodies and their mindset, just start seeking that accountability, because you see the great example and how much better their life is. So yeah, that's great. Tell me, what is your superpower? What do you think is your gift from God? I believe that God gives us something very specific that we're the best in the world at, and then we still need to work towards that. But it comes to you. It's come almost like I call it like a shit sandwich. It's almost like something that comes effortless to you, and it's hard for the average people. People are like, "Oh man, I gotta be disciplined in order to do this." But for you, it's joy and pleasure and fun. And then, what do you feel is something that could be your mission if you had all the resources, if you had all of the money? What could you do to save the world? Those are the two things I want to know. Like, what is your superpower, and what would you do to save the world?
Well, I believe that my superpower is the ability to extract the best out of every person. I believe in the human potential, and I also believe that every person has a gift. And with the people that I coach, I believe that I have the ability to extract the best out of them. So I could take somebody who has really bad habits and has a lot of struggles in his life, and I'm able through my coaching to extract the best out of him so he can transform. And in terms of how would I save the world? Well, I would, if I had unlimited resources, I would focus on spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ and invest in building churches and pretty much educating people on the importance of faith. I believe that will be my priority. And I have no excuse not to do that now, by the way, because having the excuse of not having the financial resources is never an excuse. There's always something you could do. But I believe that will be something that I would focus on, because I believe that faith in God is the most important thing. And if you have that, everything else will line up. So if people can be inspired and encouraged through the gospel and through the purpose that God has for them, that they could be redeemed, they could be made new, that they're not condemned, that everything works out for their goodness according to God's purposes, I believe there's going to be something that I would focus on.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked you that question. Now you said that you don't have an excuse, and he's the main provider. So as long as you go bold and courageous to do that, make disciples. Do you somehow intertwine that with what you do now when you coach those guys? Do you include some scripture sometimes, or you try to keep things separated?
I do keep things separate to an extent because obviously I have respect for people and I have clients from different belief system. But I do encourage them because we have weekly calls and conversations with each one of them. I encourage them obviously to read the Bible and to really commit to God because again, with God you have a purpose, right? We have a purpose, and I believe that God draws to Himself people, and as long as you plant the seed, God will obviously be the one who will give the increase. So I don't include it in a big way, but I definitely have it as a part of my communication because I believe that helps. I believe that a discipline is something that is within us. I don't believe that discipline is something that you build. Yes, you can build it over time, but I believe everyone has the power to become disciplined. I believe that will happen only if you have a vision, compelling vision. And with compelling vision, you take action, and it's just a matter of time, that consistent action to build discipline. So yeah.
Do you have any siblings or your any brothers or sisters?
No, I'm the only child.
Oh, nice. And do you is your mom in Bulgaria?
Yeah, currently she's there.
How often do you talk to her?
I talk to her pretty much every day.
Yeah.
Every day, yeah. We message each other. If we don't call each other over the phone, we message each other every day. And yeah, the plan is for her to eventually will come here.
I love that your dad inspired you to have this strong vision. I know you want to help at least 1 million dads to change, and they're going to impact the life of so many, right? Because especially now we live in like a fatherless world. They're attacking the father hardcore, and I love that your vision and your mission is focused on the father, and it's a way to honor your dad. And I know that he smiles from heaven right now, and he's so proud of you. I have a friend, and he was my client as well, and I was helping him with branding and kind of like building his business and his coaching business. And he's a bodybuilding coach, and he was, I don't know exactly what they call these things that they inject, to get super strong. But I know that a recent Mr. Olympia died because of that, and the game has become so competitive that if you're not on these steroids, you can't really be competitive. You can't really compete with these guys. So his idea, he was involved in providing these things for a lot of his clients, but many of them could not have babies, and they couldn't reproduce, which I think is one of our main purposes on earth. And I was like, why don't you? That was my idea for his brand. I was like, why don't you, in the name of those people who are losing their life and those people who are not able to reproduce, why don't you come up with a program that exposes all this? Talk about it, because nobody's talking about it. People are dying. People are going through these health issues, and expose that reality, and then come up with some type of detox system, because there's probably a system to get that out of your body, just like you can detox from drugs, from alcohol, from things like that. You can probably detox from these chemicals. And if they are going to use it, because there's some guys that are not even professionals, they're amateurs, and they want to do it to satisfy their ego, and they just go to the gym and they will take steroids. What's your experience with like steroids? And I'm sure you get that question a lot. Human growth, and I know you're clean, but what's your experience with pre-workouts, steroids, and all these chemicals that are now in the market, and almost make 15, 16-year-old kids feel obligated to get involved with that?
Yeah, yeah, it's part of the world nowadays. It's something that every person needs to make a decision on his own and has to get educated on that topic, because especially with performance enhancing drugs, it's a very dangerous game. And unless you're educated, you should not even think about using none of those things. As a matter of fact, unless, if you're not professional, it's a waste of your time, waste of your money, obviously as well, and you're playing with your health by engaging in that game. But like anything else, we live in a society with social media where people are exposed to guys who are in phenomenal shape, right? And obviously, a lot of people want to get in that kind of shape, but they don't understand not only the work that is that they have to put in. They don't understand the path those guys are on, and they engage in taking those substances. I'm against those substances unless you are someone who is above certain age and you definitely need it, because let's say you have low testosterone and you get your blood work done and a professional advises you to take TRT. But besides that, it's literally you're playing with your health. And most of the guys not even educated on the topic of how to do it and what to do. So this is my opinion, but I agree it's very dangerous. I mean, there's so many bodybuilders who have passed away because of
Yeah.
heart issues and different substances they have abused for years.
Is there a substance that you would tell viewers right now, don't take this? This is like bad news. Is there a substance that's actually dangerous out there, kind of like fentanyl is dangerous for drug addicts? Is there a substance for bodybuilders that is just bad news?
I mean, I will tell them to stay away from Trembolone, for example. Trembolone is like one of the worst, the most potent steroid out there. Extremely dangerous, extremely toxic for the liver, and it's not worth it. And as a matter of fact, none of those substances are worth it unless you have decided that you want to become a pro bodybuilder and you understand what's the game about and you understand the repercussions of taking those substances. If you're not professional, if you're someone who just wants to get in shape, do regular blood work, eat healthy, train, and after you reach certain age, if you feel like your testosterone levels are low, get your blood work done, get it checked by a hormonal therapist, and if he prescribes you TRT, then you can get on TRT. But besides that, I would not recommend that, right? But specifically regarding Trembolone, I don't believe anybody should be taking Trembolone, not even professional.
How often do you do blood work?
I do blood work every 6 months.
And what is a economical way to approach this? Because a lot of people listening right now, they're like, I don't have health insurance. I don't. This probably costs thousands of dollars. How do you find the right person to check your hormone level?
I mean, obviously there are clinics, right, with specialists. So whatever you're living, you can call the clinic nearby and have a consultation with the specialist and just have an understanding who this doctor is and what are the services that he offers. But I believe that it's good to do blood work once or twice a year, specifically to check obviously not only your testosterone levels but your hormones, right? Specifically like your thyroid, your lipids, and bad cholesterol, good cholesterol. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like economical way, I don't believe that you should be cheap with your health. So even if you don't have health insurance, you should still pay for it because it's for your health, right? Like you can save from other things, not your health.
We've been friends for a while, and I followed your journey in the past few years. And I know that you've tried vegan. You went through that period, and you kind of shared with everybody how you felt, and you inspired me. I tried it for a month, and I felt good, but for some reason I couldn't do it for a longer time. It was easier for me to be a vegan than to be carnivore. On the third day of carnivore, I was like, man, I miss the flavor of vegetables. Like I saw Jordan Peterson and he was talking about his daughter and his great success with carnivore diet. And I was thinking, oh, eating steak all day long, yeah, I can do that. Third day, I was out. I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. So I know nutrition is huge for you, and it probably breaks your heart when you go to the gym and see somebody that you also see, working really hard, and then they eat burgers and fries and pizza and destroy themselves. But I also seen some moments in following you where you were eating a lot of carbs and you were kind of breaking stigmas and debunking myths about carbs too. So I know nutrition is a big part of your game. What are some food combinations that work for you specifically? Have you found what works for you? And probably you would say that different bodies, different blood work, and all different lifestyles and different activity level all make all make sense for the specific individual. But what's your experience? You've tried it all, and what does it come down to?
Yeah, it's interesting because in terms of nutrition, sustainability is the most important quality, which means that every person will have different nutritional strategy that might work for him depending upon that person's goals and lifestyle and what he's trying to achieve. For example, intermittent fasting might work for an average person, but for a professional athlete, definitely is not going to work. So my journey with nutrition is very interesting because at the beginning, I used to eat like pretty much anything. And even though I was training consistently, I didn't really improve much. Then I became a vegan back right before COVID, like 2017, 2018. I believe I was vegan for 14 months, and I felt great in terms of energy. Everything was good, but my blood work showed some deficiencies in terms of iron,
Mhm.
and also I definitely noticed my strength being depleted a little bit.
Yeah.
And then ever since, I adopted a very balanced approach where I will have a lot of protein, I will have some carbohydrates, but the main sources of carbohydrates are from fruits, vegetables, whole grains. I would eat a lot of healthy fats, avocados, almonds, nuts, salmon, steak, only lean steak. I would eat like once, twice a week. And my strategy right now is just a very balanced approach. So pretty much anything that I eat, there has to be a fruit and vegetable to it. I would eat, berries. I would eat a lot of green and leafy vegetables, spinach, asparagus, Brussels sprouts. And I combine all the foods in such a manner that I have fruit, vegetable, and then I will have a source of protein and sometimes whole grain carbohydrates. Like for example, quinoa would have, brown rice, or would have sweet potato. But I'm a proponent of having a very flexible approach and sustainable approach. Now, with that being said, can you have a cheat meal here and there and still be in phenomenal shape? Yes, you can. But I've decided the past, I would say 6 months, not to eat any junk food. So ever since maybe like around April, I cut off completely any junk food. I don't eat anything, any sweets. I don't eat any fast food whatsoever at all.
No
And
ice cream?
no, I quit all ice cream, sweets. I adopted a very strict approach simply because I like the way I feel when I eat clean,
Yeah.
right? But again, I don't want people to think that, oh, I should never have those foods. You definitely can in moderation as long as you're aware of them, right? And you don't consume too much of them. But I personally, from my own personal experience, I rather eat clean all the time.
Yeah, and I've been my commitment to food is to eat like a king, which means eat real food.
Oh yeah, that's a
Kings
good
eat
approach.
real food, nothing processed, nothing that comes in a package. And since I've made that decision, it's been so easy. And Sunday was my cheat day, and I would feel like crap every Monday morning. So I'm like, man, I for like 5 minutes of enjoyment for this ice cream, I'm paying the price. I think I'm lactose intolerant or something, but it's bad. Like I get bloated, and it's really not good. So I remember you eating these big chocolate cakes and all this. You were going hard.
I did, that's for sure. Tiramisu, I used to eat tiramisu every day pretty much in the past.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. What social stigma do you think society needs to get over?
Regarding nutrition or overall?
Yeah, regarding nutrition.
Well, that they're fat burning foods
Oh, really?
because
Yeah.
there's no such thing as
Strawberries.
fat burning foods.
You say strawberries will give you six pack.
Yeah, because it all boils down to overall being in a slight caloric deficit with increased energy expenditure by being more active or totally eating foods below your needs, right? So when people say, "Oh, those foods are fat burning," I mean, you might eat very clean, but if you consume too much of those foods and you're over your calories, you're still going to gain weight, right? So this is something that is like a stigma. I do not like labeling foods as good or bad. It's
Mhm.
just some foods are more nutritious. They provide you with all the nutrients you need, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and there are other foods that are very dense in calories and they don't provide you with those nutrients like cookies, cakes, right? So I don't like labeling food as good or bad because it kind of creates like a stigma and a person becomes very anxious when he or she wants to approach certain meal, right, in their mind. So this is something that society has to, get rid of because nowadays you see all those influencers trying to push certain biases and agendas instead of being just very transparent.
How important is cardio for burning fat, or nutrition is more important? Because a lot of people have the belief, oh, I'm gonna have some Nutella and some ice cream, and then I'm just gonna go run 5 miles and burn it.
Well, that's the thing. The two most important components, if you want to get fit, is actually sleep and nutrition. Sleep, because if you don't get enough sleep, that's going to mess up your hormones and you're going to have cravings throughout the day. You might overeat. And
Oh, tell me
nutrition,
about it.
yeah, nutrition is the next one because based upon the amount of foods you're eating and the quality of the foods, that's going to determine how your training is going to be. And cardio, it is important. It is important because cardiovascular health is critical. Obviously, having healthy heart should be a priority. So the way I see it is that you should be doing both cardiovascular training and strength training. But yeah, in terms of cardio, how many calories you can burn, this is a horrible idea to have. Oh, let me have a Nutella and then I'm going to go run. Because people also don't understand that burning fat and losing fat are two different processes. Burning fat is called fat oxidation, and you're not going to lose fat unless your overall amount of calories um, is below the amount of energy expenditure that you have. So just because you're burning fat, it doesn't mean you're going to lose fat. So it's another thing that I guess gets people confused.
Yeah, so I think I've read one of your posts once when you were just making it very simple that it's about calorie deficiency, not so much about uh, workout. But if you, it's kind of like a bank account, right? If you deposit more money than you spend, you're gonna have, if you burn more calories than you consume, you're gonna have good body. So, what's your? Do you believe in rest in days off, or do you stay active every day?
Yeah, just to add something for the previous point
Yeah,
regarding calories, people, when I say that, people think that, oh, then I can eat anything I want, right, and still lose weight. Well, this is not a good way of looking at it. You still should be prioritizing healthier food options that give you more micronutrients. But if you want to add a piece of cake here and there in moderation, you surely can, right? It's not the end of the world if you have it. You can still get in shape. Regarding rest, I personally don't have any rest days, and I believe that if your training is programmed in a certain way, you don't really need rest days,
yeah.
because training is about setting the right training volume, intensity, and frequency. So let's say on certain days you can have active recovery. You can go for a slow jog, do some mobility workout, and that's considered obviously a training on its own. So you don't really have to have off days.
One of the things that changed my mind about this was 75 hard, because there's no rest days in 75 hard, and I just felt so much better. Didn't have muscle injuries, didn't have any cramps, didn't have anything, and it was like so much better without any rest. And people like would argue, there would be debates that your body needs to rest, and the body is resting when you're going to a walk versus what you did yesterday. Like, I play soccer 4 times a week, and that's like pretty intense. So I don't love lifting weights. I kind of put myself into that. And recently, in the past couple years, I started doing more exercises with my body. There's an app, Six Pack in 30 Days, and it's just simple, like V-ups and push-ups and stuff like that you just use your body. And I've seen better results, like in the mirror, from working with my body than lifting weights. And I wonder if my mental state has something to do with that, because if you don't like the workout, you release some cortisol, I've heard. And if you enjoy what you do, like when I play soccer, I don't need to be motivated. I go there to have fun. I'm in the zone. It's my time to meditate, almost like the world is outside, and I'm just in the game, and it's joy and pleasure for me. It's joy and great exercise at the same time. But going to the gym is like, oh man, I'm gonna go do these reps. It's kind of like a chore rather than and then, am I working hard enough? Am I sweating? Is this the right weight? Could I go heavier? Should I do more reps? So there's like always overthinking when I go. And this HIIT training that I do, I like it because it's fast. In 15, 20 minutes, I'm sweating, and it's like I see great results. So one of the rules I try to go by is never go, because sometimes I travel, sometimes, and I still don't have an excuse not to do at least 15 minutes of that. But sometimes I'll have to wake up early, and somehow I don't stay active. But I never go more than 3 days. This is like, if you go over 3 days, it's bad. You could fall off the train. So what are some rules that you go by? And how do you train? Do you lift weights? Do you use your body? Do you still play sports where you can just go all in and enjoy the activity?
Yeah, I train. I do lift weights. I do strength training 3 4 days a week, whole body workouts. I incorporate a lot of calisthenics there as well, but I also do a lot of cardio. I do a lot of I do running, sprinting hills. I train Brazilian jiu-jitsu as well. And the whole philosophy about training is that yes, you have to enjoy it, right? Because if, let's say, you don't like lifting weights, even though resistance training is very important, you're not going to be consistent with it, right? So you
Hmm.
should focus on activity that you actually enjoy. And if you enjoy doing whole body workouts, let's say with your own body, there's nothing wrong with it. You can definitely build muscle and get in decent shape that way, because you're going to be consistent with it, right? So this is something that is very important. Like, if I coach a person and that person doesn't want to do certain exercises, even if I explain to him how important it is, he will not do it because he's not going to stick around with it. So I have to design something that he would actually enjoy. And regarding training every day, you can definitely train every day. The most people believe that you need a total rest is because they don't have right nutrition and proper sleep. I believe that if you have those two in place, you can train every day, right? But most people either have compromised sleep or their nutrition is not on point, and because of that, they lack the energy, they feel sluggish, and they don't feel like training.
So I have a son now. He's 2 months old, and my sleeping pattern is out the window. I used to sleep, specific times, and now I wake up in the middle of the night. So, would you recommend working out, lifting weights, if you only had 3 hours of sleep?
No, definitely not.
So, if you're gonna do hard workout, it's best to have how many hours of sleep at least?
Well, you should be having. I mean, it's all individual, but in my opinion, should be having 7 8 hours of sleep, right? So now some people can function. I, for example, can function well at 6 6.5, but it's better if you have more than that, right? Especially if you're going to be doing a heavy resistance training type of workout. So if somebody just sleeps 3 hours, then you're better off going for a light cardio training, like walking or maybe a slow jog, something like that.
Sleep probably burns more fat than other things, huh?
I
Because
mean, it burns fat as part of your what is called basal metabolic rate, the amount of calories your body burns in a resting state, but it controls your hormones. If
yeah,
you don't have enough sleep, you're going to have more cravings the next day and you're going to overeat, right? It controls your leptin and ghrelin, the two most important hormones regarding fat loss. So, this is the most important thing about sleep. And not to mention that your mood is going to be compromised, right? So, there's like so many repercussions of not getting enough sleep.
yeah. What do you think about cold plunge? Is that something you would recommend for burning fat?
I wouldn't recommend it for burning fat because it's true that it burns fat, but the amount of fat that it burns is insufficient in terms of helping somebody lose weight. But I would recommend it for recovery from a cardiovascular type of training, right? I would definitely recommend it for that. The only thing is that studies show doing cold plunges right after weight training, it might get in the way of you building muscle. So I would encourage people, if they do cold plunges, to give themselves a few hours after lifting weights, or just do it at a different part of the day.
Or they recommended to do it before you lift weights?
Yeah, that's also is a better option. Just don't do it right after lifting weights.
That's a good part. Good point. Good point. Tell me about your biggest success story. I saw a post a couple of days ago. Some dude was like 200 and something pounds, and now he's 168. Like a completely different people. He's got six pack. What's the biggest success story? Like the one that shocked you? Because I know you've helped hundreds and hundreds of people.
I mean, that's the thing. I believe that all the guys that who go through my program are heroes, and it's going to be unfair to point out one specific
Yeah.
because I love and respect all of them,
Why
right?
don't you give me top three, okay?
I mean, I can't really because they're all the transformations are unique in their own, and
We apologize to them proactively. The ones that come to mind.
I mean, I would mention because he's my friend as well, like personal friend Eric Tice. He's a great guy. With him, it inspired me not only not the transformation itself, which is absolutely amazing. He dropped 60 pounds in the first 6 months, 62 pounds, but the fact that he's a father, he's a very busy guy, and it's different when you have kids and when you run a business or you work a very demanding job. It's totally different than if you're single, right? Obviously, when you're single, you have more time.
Oh yeah.
But seeing this dude waking up at 3 a.m. to go work out, consistently eat at almost like 90% of the time, eating extremely healthy, very disciplined, being very coachable, always communicating with me if he had any problems or whatever. It just that showed me who he is as a person, and all the transformations that they have, absolutely amazing. I mean, I love all those guys, right? But if I can mention only one, it will be him.
And how does it work, your program? How do people sign up for it, and how do people get coached by you? Is it a combination of nutrition and certain exercises that you recommend? Obviously, you mentioned there's a weekly coaching call. So, what does it feel like to be a part of this Spartan Dad project?
So pretty much how that works is that I organize their whole lifestyle surrounding habits. I have a platform that I've developed where all participants are registered, and there I organize their whole schedule when it boils down to training, nutrition, stress management, rest, different habits that they have to execute every day and different tasks. And we're constantly in communication there. Now, in terms of training, strength training is the priority, and we follow a blueprint that I have created, programming that goes from 3 months up to 2 years ahead of time. However, the workouts within each for each person are personalized based upon their level, right? So I qualify people based upon how well they're equipped to do the exercise and what their level is. Some people are total beginners that never train. Some people are more advanced. They have some level of training, but not enough, right? And they have more people. They're like almost like pro athletes in a way, right? But everything is designed for each person. We consider their injuries, right? Their level, and we follow a blueprint. It's called an AP method, adaptation and progression. So every 6 weeks, we make adaptations into their training and progression so they can consistently improve. And that way they can never hit a plateau, which is the most common thing with a lot of guys. When they go to the gym, they keep training in a certain way over and over again. At a certain point, the body, the central nervous system adapts and they don't see any improvements happening. So this is how we do it. And obviously, I'm connected to them via specific chat. They also have the ability to receive coaching calls from me if they wish so, right? And that way I can oversee the whole process, holding them accountable.
That's good. Tell me a little bit about your personal life.
Yeah, I mean, personal life, I have somebody obviously next to me, a Christian woman that we've been together. We haven't gotten married yet, right? But it's something that I truly enjoy, and it's something that by the grace of God, obviously, is very important to me. Obviously, besides that, what I do in terms of coaching is the most important thing right now. Besides that I'm focused on. So whatever God has decided that to happen, we'll get married, God's willing, and everything will be fine. But yeah, I have somebody next to me.
Good.
She has no social media, none of that, right? Very very humble woman, and yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
What's the most annoying thing about social media that you see, specifically in your business and in your industry? Are there some things that you look at and you're like, come on, man, this is the enemy?
I mean, social media is just a game, right? I always say blame the game, don't blame the player. People just play the game and they use it to their advantage. But in terms of nothing really annoys me because I understand it is just part of the game. Some people are dishonest; they make ridiculous claims. Some people are not dishonest, and I've noticed that when people make crazy claims, is what catches others' attention, right? So like when I talk about nutrition, I tell boring stuff, so that's not very interesting to people. But if I make some bold claim that certain food would, let's say, eliminate 20 pounds from your belly fat, right? Everybody would want to watch that. So what's annoying to me, if I can emphasize on that, is just people making like crazy claims. Let's say they would say that fasting would is a miracle tool, for example, or they would say other things that are kind of like very very
Do you
bold statements, not supported by science.
Are you fasting or no?
I like fasting to a certain extent. I just don't like when people exaggerate the effects of fasting and make it as if it's some kind of like miracle thing, right? I do fast for religious purposes above all things, not really related to trying to lose weight or anything like that. And more I see it more as a tool of self control,
Hmm.
fasting. So I do fast a couple of times a month from 24 hours to 72 hours.
What's your advice?
Regarding fasting,
No, regarding life. What is one thing that you're doing that you're not supposed to be doing?
I mean, my advice to people is just to trust God. Really,
No,
that's
not advice, but advice.
vice. My vice.
Yeah.
Well, I probably need to have more patience with people, right? I believe that that's something I need to work on. Like, for example, maybe because the way I was brought up and I see how people make excuses, I tend to judge people too harsh and be like, I can't believe this guy is acting a certain way. Like, this is pathetic. I will think like that in my head. I'm like, he needs to act more courageously. He needs to stick around and be more disciplined. But I also have to understand that we're not all the same, right? People have different problems. We're on our own path. I'm not walking in the shoes of that individual, so I can't really make such harsh judgments. So this is something that, by God's grace, I pray that I have more patience to a certain extent, so I can emphasize more with people.
Yeah, patience is the sister of wisdom. One thing that helped me out, I had a similar problem because I've been a sales coach for a while, and sometimes I will be thinking like, "Hey, why wouldn't this person do this? It's good for him," and judge their character. But instead, I will take a step back and ask them a really good question and kind of give them the education and the consequences and ask them to choose. And a lot of the times when they make the wrong choice, I don't have the same reaction. I'm able to let it go and still respect them and love them and accept them. But more often than not, they will make the right choice, and it's just better this way. If that helps you, so next time when you run into that situation and that inside voice be like, "What a loser," instead of doing that, you could be like, "Hey, I was just curious. If you obviously have a choice to make here. Make this choice, you can expect this to happen, and if you make that choice, you can expect that to happen, and you don't have to learn from your personal example. What consequences would you choose? And you'll be surprised. People like, you're right, man. I need to stop being weak." Tell me, when was the last time? I'm going to change the state a little bit. When was the last time when you were hopelessly lost?
Well, that was when my father passed away. The day my father passed away, it was I felt like really angry.
Were you
And
here in the States?
yeah, that was 2015, 10th of March.
And were you able to go back?
No, so that's actually one of my regrets. The things that I couldn't be there for the funeral, and there was a long period after that I couldn't forgive myself for it. Right, I obviously didn't share that with anybody, but yeah, I felt hopeless because I looked up to my father, and back then I even blamed God. I was like, why did that happen, right? But then obviously as I mature as a Christian, I understand that struggles and those kind of experiences are part of life, and at the end of the day, we have to celebrate the people when we have them next to us, right? Love them and respect them, but we have to understand that this world is a temporary thing, right? And there's eternity that awaits. So that was the time that I was hopeless but for a very small period of time. I tend to be a very optimistic person by default. Maybe that's why I never fall into any spiral of me feeling depressed or being very hopeless about anything, because I believe that God has given us grace and purpose, and with Him you can achieve anything.
Yeah. You know, there's one verse where Jesus says, let the dead bury the dead. And when you read that, kind of comes off harsh, but I understand it in a very positive way that they're doing much better in heaven than we are here. We're here in the character building stage in this world, and it's a word of hope to me that they're already there. So just focus on the mission here, on what we're supposed to do, on our purpose here. I don't know if that gives you hope, but I believe that he's smiling at you from heaven, and you're making him very, very proud. What was the process of overcoming that hopelessness?
Well, pretty much, yeah. It's I knew that I had to move on, because I mean life continues. I have mother that is in Bulgaria, and I had things to do. I had to pay bills, and interesting, ironically enough, when that happened, that was like probably the toughest time of my life here in the States, because I was struggling financially. I had like a whole bunch of issues. I couldn't pay my rent at one point. Almost got kicked out, and my car broke down. I had to go to work 5 miles. I had to walk every morning. I used to work in FedEx overnight at that specific time. So yeah, it was crazy because like I
How
had
long
all
does
those.
it take to walk 5 miles? How long does it take to walk 5 miles?
I mean, it took me like around 45 minutes, I believe. But that's the thing; it was in the middle of the night because I was working overnight back then, and it was for a week until I was able to
You
get
were running?
fix my car. I was running. Sometimes I was walking, right? But it's just ironic that everything happened in that specific time period. So it was. So I couldn't really like stay hopeless, because at the end of the day, like I still have to go to work. I still have to do certain things, and this is why I believe that actions cures everything. I mean, yes, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel in a lower state certain times, because we're all humans. We all have different emotions. But I believe that God gives us the strength to obviously overcome that, and do the right things, because life continues, right? And especially when you're a father, when you're a leader, there are things that you have to do, and how you feel that might seem kind of like cruel to some people, like should have no effect on the things you do.
Yeah, I agree. What are some things that you would recommend to someone who is in your situation right now, someone who had just lost a loved one? Is there anything practical that you would recommend to them? Because I don't qualify for that, but you do.
I would tell them to focus on the life that their loved one has had on earth, and celebrate the life that whoever they've lost had on earth, and all the beautiful moments they have had, and understand that eternity awaits, and also that they have pretty much accomplished their duty, their purpose in this world, right? This is why God has taken them away, and they have to celebrate the life that that person had on earth. And obviously, when you know that, you have responsibility when you lost a loved one to live with a purpose, so you can make that person proud. So that should give you the fuel. But I also understand that that person will go through a period of trauma and being sad, and you need to embrace that. You can't have all that bottled up emotion inside of you, and pretend like nothing happened. It's okay. I always say it's okay to be vulnerable. It's not okay to be weak, right? So it's okay to show vulnerability. It's okay to be okay with your emotions, and obviously face your emotions. But you have to also understand that life continues, and you want to make your loved one proud. If it's your father, you want to make your dad proud. You want to make your mother proud. You want to be the person that they can see and be like, wow, I raised an amazing, amazing child, right? And I also understand that a hero is not a hero until he has to overcome something, whether it's a spiritual battle, a mental battle, a physical battle. So you have to go through some obstacles in life, whether that is losing a loved one or something else, in order for you to become the person God has intended for you to be. And as long as you embrace that concept, you'll be okay and you will continue.
Are you involved in any art, music, or painting, or dancing, or something like that?
No, I'm a very bad dancer. I'm a horrible dancer.
Somebody lied to you about that.
No, I don't dance.
No,
I like I will try dancing, but nah, it's definitely not my forte.
you don't have to dance on your wedding.
Yeah, I will have to.
I went to classes.
Really? Oh wow, that's amazing.
Well, before the wedding, because I'm just like you. I'm not a dancer. Gangsters don't dance. I was. My wife is a ballet teacher, so she can
Right.
dance whatever. She can dance everything, and we had such a great contrast because I don't like to dance and self-conscious when it comes down to dancing. So we went on lessons, 3 4 lessons, and I ran into a teacher. The dance teacher was so good. I learned how to be a better teacher from her approach because her goal was to make you feel good about your progress early on. So she'll teach you something really simple in the first 5 10 minutes that it's actually like you see doing it, you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. I can do that. So you're filled with desire to learn more. And I'm like, wow, this is genius the way you approach things. So it's very important the first thing we teach our students. What will be the first thing we teach so they could take a bite of that and see results immediately? Because if they do that, then they will be like, all right, I'm ready. Let's go. And sometimes they're very skeptical. And if we start with theory and self sabotage creeps in, and then they give up. But that was my thing with dancing. What about singing? Are you a good singer?
No, no, definitely not a good singer.
So, do you believe that people could have six pack if they eat desserts? I know that Khabib said in one interview, if you eat ice cream or chocolate, no six pack.
It's all regarding the quantity. It depends upon the quantity. I mean, if you have like the whole cake, it's gonna be tough. But if you
Oh,
have like one piece and everything else that you eat is really on point, and you're a pretty active guy, you can. So yeah, it's about balance, right? It's about balance. You can have it, but it has to be in moderation.
yeah. What is the biggest misconception about nutrition and about exercise? One thing that's been sold out there, and actually it's the exact opposite.
Well, that carbs are bad. It has to be the number one misconception.
That Atkins been doing that for like 100 years.
Yeah, the carbs are bad. So again, like there's no bad or good foods like by default, right? It all depends within the context
Or
and the
fat is
quantity
bad.
you're eating. Yeah, yeah. This is number one. And in terms of training, is that you have to lift very heavy to build muscle.
Oh yeah, you have to lift heavy. Is that what you said?
No, that there's the misconception that you have to lift heavy, you have to train until failure all the time in order to build muscle. When studies shows that you can do up to 30 reps, right, and still build muscle. It's about contraction.
What's your life vision if you were to write the screenplay of your life, and let's say you've got 120 years to live, up until 120? What would you love to do with all of your time for the rest of your life? And when that moment comes, what would you like to see as far as legacy?
Well, how long I'm going to live, that's by God's grace. But if we assume that that's going to be the case, then my goal is obviously helping 1 million dads, and besides that is spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ and just sharing my faith. And eventually, I'm planning to move to a place pretty remote and just stay there and focus on my spiritual journey more than the physical, right? But until it gets to that point, obviously, my number one goal is just helping dads and sharing my faith.
Once we hit million dads, are you gonna quit or?
I will continue to coach people, but I would start, prioritizing more the spiritual aspect of my life in terms of sharing my faith more profoundly. Even though I'm doing that as well now, but that will be something that I'm going to be focused more, and that's going to be that's really my vision, right? My vision is just helping as many people as possible, sharing my faith, getting involved more with charities, and more involved with like helping churches and those kind of things.
Yeah, I feel like that's on your heart, brother. You need to start doing some of that things because, like you said, we don't know how long we have.
Yeah,
So
that's true. It's absolutely true. So in the hands of God.
Anything that so tell me a little bit about the program. If people reach their goal and exceed their goal, do they still stay in the program? Because this is like a lifestyle. It's not really. You probably have some people that have amazing results, then they quit the program, and then they reach out back to you after 6 months, be like, dude, I need to get back on it.
Yeah,
Or
I definitely have those people, even though they're in minority. But my whole program goes into different levels, right? So level one is called the Fat Loss Accelerator. The objective there is just fat loss, and it's from 3 to 6 months. And then whoever finishes that and shows me really good adherence to the program is qualified to continue to level two. Level two is anywhere from a year up to 2 years. And here we start prioritizing more training for performance purposes, getting stronger, building more muscle, training like an athlete to an extent with more advanced methodologies. So it's a lifestyle program. I always say you're not going to build new habits in 3 months, even 6 months. If you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear, he explains that it takes like almost a year to build new habits. So you have to be repetitive with your actions. And this is why I've designed a program in a way that is from 3 to 6 months, the first level, and then the second level is up to 2 years pretty much.
who is someone that you look up to when it comes down to family?
Like from a family member.
No, like someone who's a good example of a father, husband, someone that you want to model.
I mean, I have personal friends that are there in such way, but like if it's somebody famous, I mean, it has to be probably like Jocko Willing. I like,
Mm, he's good.
right? Yeah, because he has his family. I'm not quite sure regarding whether he's Christian, but if we put the faith aside for a second and just based upon his quality as a leader, that's who I would look up to.
What is this thing with his watch? He always posts his watch in a certain time. Is it like he's doing a certain workout for how long? Or
Yeah, he trains early in the morning. I mean, he just showcases his level of discipline, and that inspires a lot of people. I
oh,
he
that's when he wakes up.
Yeah, he wakes up early. He actually inspired me to start waking up early. I always used to be like a morning person, but I used to wake up at like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. But ever since I started following him, I started waking up at like 4:30 myself.
And you go to bed at 9:30.
Yeah, I go to bed like pretty early, like I would say 8:39.
Yeah, nothing good happens after 9. That's what my grandma used to say.
That's a great advice. Your grandmother is a wise woman,
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, what good could happen after 9? Nothing good.
especially if you go out. Nothing
Yeah,
good.
you only get in trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
When it comes down to business, who do you look up to
When
as
it
a
comes
model?
down to business, I mean, there's several guys I look up to. I like Gary Vaynerchuk. I like Simon Sinek. I like too, right? I follow those guys, and also some of the business coaches that I've worked with. I mean, I've worked with a dude. His name is David Smith. I work with Vince Del Monte. Great guys, great dudes, and they have been mentors of mine, and I looked up to them.
What about what about fitness?
Regarding fitness, I mean, I like Lane Norton. Lane Norton, he's a nutritionist. He's a PhD in nutrition, and he's a very straight up guy. He doesn't have any agenda. So pretty much he just says how it is and goes based on scientific research. So that's somebody that I definitely look up to.
And as far as spirituality, who do you think is a good person to model
I
besides
mean,
Jesus?
yeah, obviously, right? So I mean, I follow a lot of pastors that they have helped me throughout my faith and my journey with God and Jesus Christ. I would say Pastor David Lynn is one of them. He's an amazing man of God who preaches the gospel on the streets. Also, John MacArthur, Charles Spurgeon are some of the guys that I follow. Charles Spurgeon, he was preacher in the 19th century, and they have helped me strengthen my faith with their preaching and their boldness for Christ. So those are the guys I follow.
What's the most embarrassing story from your childhood?
That's a good question, man. Most embarrassing story. Really can't think of any. I mean, maybe when my father spanked me, like when I was away for like 2 days and came home and he spanked
You
me.
were gone for 2 days. I thought I misheard you earlier when you said that. Where were you for 2 days?
Yeah, I went to play soccer and I didn't come. Maybe it was.
I
I don't
know.
want to be. I don't want to confuse you, but it was like either a day or two. But I was away like for overnight too, and then I came the next day. So it will be like one night and 2 days. And I played soccer. I went to sleep with a friend, but I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell, and I was like 7, 8 years old. I didn't tell my parents. So we didn't have cell phones back then. And then when I get home, my father spanked me. And he did it like in front of people who was outside. So that was kind of like embarrassing. But it was fine. Now he was right to do so. So
What is the most overrated product out there in the market?
all testosterone boosters.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people are going.
they're gimmick. Most of them, 90% of them. And also, if I have to be specific, the V-shaped belt, the sauna belt that people put, and they think they're gonna lose body fat. That's a gimmick too.
And what about energy drinks? Are you a fan of energy drinks?
So I used to consume like a lot of energy drinks and a lot of pre-workouts in the past, but I actually cut off all caffeine recently, and I feel much better. So I'm not necessarily against them, but like if you're going to be using them, like definitely has to be in moderation, and you should cycle it off. You should have days and weeks where you're not consuming any caffeine, just so your receptors kind of clear up, and then you can start like taking them in moderation. But if people ask me like should I take them or not, I would encourage them not to consume any caffeine
Mm.
because you get in the way of you're not getting enough sleep. Now, if you consume it in a responsible way, right, you can be okay.
Yeah, back in the day there was stuff. I mean, they're probably still around. There was something like lipo, something that was like heavy caffeine, and I was always getting jittery when I was younger from caffeine. Somebody gave me that for burning fat, I remember. So there's a lot of those fitness products that are just loaded with caffeine, right?
Oh yeah, because it's quite cheap. Caffeine is a very cheap substance.
That's why. My man, I'm so glad that you were able to share with us some of your personal life and giving us abundance of tips, debunking some myths, and tell me a little bit about the political state and the way the world is right now. What do you think is the biggest threat for America, for the world? Where do you think this world is going to? Where do you stand on your ideology about the world?
I mean, as a Christian, I stand on Jesus Christ, right? And but I have to, if I have to like debate politics, it's just those things are to be expected. According to the Bible, we live in the end times, and people will become more hostile towards each other. We see rumors for wars. We see war happening in Israel, in Ukraine, and all the kind of things. And the thing about me is that I obviously love people, right? And I pray for all those conflicts to be resolved. But we have to understand that as Americans, we have to be united, and we have to also understand that the biggest threats are from within, not from outside. I don't want to get into a lot of details because I don't want to be counseled, right, to an extent. But the government is at fault for a lot of things, and you have to have a distrust about the government to a certain extent because there are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes in terms of pharmaceutical companies and big players controlling the government and using the media to obviously project certain news into people and to form narrative. I will say to people to just be very, very critical about anything that they hear over the news, to do their own research, and to be skeptical about things because again, the media has been used as a tool to control people because whatever the media says, most people tend to follow it blindly and form their opinions based on the media. So I would say to be very skeptical about it, about everything.
Where do you get your news from?
Well, that's the thing. It's interesting because I don't really, I don't really watch any news. I don't really watch any news. I mostly from the internet. But the thing is that when I read an article, I also do my own research. I don't really accept whatever they're telling me as to be truth to an extent because I know how it works. Most media outlets they seek sensationalism, and they're very good at projecting bad news all the time because that's what it sells. So when I read something, I tend to do my own research about it.
What's a special skill that you're trying to build right now? Something that you're not good at and you're trying to learn how to be at least average or better?
I mean, what would be that? That was a good question. I would say total self control. I believe I'm getting better at it, but I want to get to a point where nobody can annoy me, nobody can anger me, nobody can get me out of my peace. I believe that by God's grace, I'm improving there. But I used to be before somebody who used to get irritated very easily, and I would even jump into fighting people sometimes too. That's how I used to lose patience. But this is something I want to learn: just total self control and discipline in that sense.
Fighting is a big deal. I remember when we watched that fight with Masvidal and Nate Diaz in New York. It's when we met in person, and when the fights were going on, you were in it. You were like screaming from the top of your lungs. It's like one of our friends is fighting, especially when the Bulgarian guy was fighting Baga. You were like, "Whoa!" I'm like, wow, he's really passionate. He's really in it. Like it's like kind of It's a different level, you know. It was just intimidating just being next to you.
Yeah, it's. I
We're
mean,
like,
I
we're
love
like, let me
fighting.
give him some space here. Me and your buddy, we were like, let's just give Ivan a little bit of space. He's very passionate about this. Do you enjoy fighting?
Yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, if we talk about like watching fights, I'm very passionate. It's actually the only sport that I watch. I don't watch any sports. Like the only sport that I watch is like martial arts, whether it's grappling or MMA,
Who's your favorite
boxing.
fighter now?
Well, my favorite fighter always used to be George St. Pierre, right? But right now, if I can mention one, would be I like Hamzat. I like Hamzat Chimaev.
Mm,
If we put obviously like his fate and all that kind of stuff aside, like I like him as a fighter. I like Israel Adesanya as well. I mean, there's like I have respect for all the guys. It's just the guys that I love watching. If I have to mention one, by the way, is going to be Justin Gagey because he's just so entertaining to watch. So I
yeah,
would say him. Justin Gagey is my favorite fighter right now.
yeah. He's a good, humble guy, Justin.
And his fights are so entertaining to watch too.
Yeah, he's a real fighter. You know, the reason why I love Justin Gage is because he he is his foundation is fear. So he's fighting his own fear. He's stepping into fear, stepping against fear. That's how his story starts. So it's just you can still feel that it's the emotion that he's going through. It's like he's going to trump fear, and that's why he's got the tattoo "No Fear," and he used to be their model and stuff. The other guy that's close to him, Poirier, and when they had the fight, I was like, I like both of these guys. I don't know who's my favorite, but is Kamzat gonna fight with Usman now?
Yeah, yeah, they're gonna fight next week.
Who do you think is gonna win?
I think Hamzat is gonna win simply because he had more time to prepare, and Usman is like he got just cold. So I don't know if he's been training. So yeah, definitely Hamzat is the favorite, I believe.
Yeah, Kamzat is kind of like a no BS guy.
Yeah, I mean, I like his attitude like that. He can appear a little bit cocky, but as a fighter, like you got to believe that you're the best. You got to have that mindset, and he has good foundation. He has amazing wrestling. So I always give a preference to the wrestlers in any fight. I believe they're more well-rounded fighters than people who just have the striking.
Usman was very consistent before, and he was really trying to be a commercial star, which wasn't consistent with his character. So that's how it turned me off a little bit. But I think Leon took his spirit. Do you believe that fighters have a fighting spirit? That if they that's what happened to Tony Ferguson. Justin beat him so bad that he's never the same after that. It's like the
Yeah,
fighting spirit goes away.
Yeah, I believe that their motivation to compete might go away, especially if you earn a lot of money, right? And you have to also have the humility to learn from a loss, right? Because it's never good to lose. But I believe losses, whether it's on the ring or even in life, give you a good perspective to evaluate yourself, make an assessment, and learn from the experience in order to get better. In terms of Tony Ferguson, I just don't think that he has learned that there is something he has to improve, right? And because of that, he keeps having the same patterns in his fights, and that's why he loses, right?
His ego gets in the way.
Yeah, I believe that because when you experience a loss, like you have to humble yourself and obviously make a self-assessment and see what exactly did go wrong. I believe that in life we learn more from experiences like that than when we win all the time, right? And if you learn from that experience, obviously you're going to make corrections, you're going to move forward, right?
I don't remember it was Charles Oliveira who beat him. He had a strike, and there was like pictures of the last 8 opponents, how they look like. So he had a long strike of dominating, and then long strike of losing after that. So, do you believe in fighting spirit and someone beating you so bad that you lose your fighting heart, you lose the bravery, you lose the belief in yourself, maybe?
I believe that. I don't believe that you lose the bravery, but I believe that you start second guessing yourself. It's definitely a hit to your confidence. Regarding Tony Ferguson, also before he lost his first fight, because the first fight that started leading that series of losses was against Gaethje, and he also made a big mistake. He was supposed to fight Khabib, so he actually, despite the fight being canceled, he made weight for Khabib, and then he gained weight again. Then he had to make weight again for Gaethje. So that on his own was a stupid
Stressful
thing to do
experience.
because it's very stressful for the body, right? So he was already in that kind of state, and then when he lost, obviously, I believe that kind of shattered his confidence to an extent. But as a fighter, your confidence is very important. You have to always have unlimited self belief.
He stayed little too long in that fight with Justin.
Yeah, I mean, he took a beating. He took a beating that fight.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about heavyweights? John Jones versus. Are they fighting in the Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, they are, man.
And maybe
Yeah,
we need to do a reunion.
yeah. It's interesting because now I live in Florida, but yeah, that definitely is going to be, an
John
amazing
Jones
fight.
and Stipe.
Yeah, I believe that John Jones is going to win. So we'll see.
Yeah, I just think he's on a different level.
I believe that he's in the same category as when we talk about iconic sports athletes. He's in the same category like Tom Brady, like Michael Jordan. I truly believe that, especially if he wins now. In my mind, is he's in that category.
Yeah, he's very strategic. Machida used to be my favorite fighter back in the day. He was like a real life character from a video game, like a karate, and the way he beat Machida was like, whoa. It was like he killed him.
Yeah,
It was brutal. Yeah, John Jones, I think, is the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Just never shied away from anybody. Khabib was strategic, just like Islam is very strategic. They're strong, but they don't want to take too much damage.
yeah. I mean, Khabib was just very dominating while he was fighting, but you got to look up how many title defense he had versus John
Right.
Jones. John Jones, not quite sure, but I think he has like 14 or 15. While Khabib, I think, has like 3 or 4. So like in terms of legacy, he just retired too early.
Yeah, he beat Conor. I think that's one of the biggest names. And then Islam fought a bunch of average fighters, and Charles Oliveira was the only one that is competitive. But even him, it's getting interesting now. A lot of upsets.
Yeah,
Upsets. I think that this guy comes out. He also comes from abuse and comes from really tough childhood, kind of like the Sean Strickland, I think his name is, and they still deal with their emotional trauma by being professional fighters. It's like it's not even about the money, man. I'm trying to heal.
yeah, that could be it. Yeah.
Do you feel sometimes like, man, I just feel like punching somebody?
I do, but I channel that energy into training. Really, like when I start feeling angry, I just do a lot of push-ups, a lot of pull-ups. I go for a run or something. So it's all about how you channel that energy, man. Like if you feel frustrated, there some people indulge in like eating uncontrollably or drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes, right? Other people can use it for more productive purposes. It's really about how you channel that energy.
Yeah, that explains why you look like this.
Thanks.
Yeah. Have you considered working with some sponsors and doing some modeling work?
No, I don't think I have. I don't think I'm a good model. Like I don't think I have the proportions for model. But in terms of sponsors, I have had offers regarding like supplements and all that. But again, I don't really want to promote. I'm not into that game trying to promote supplements. The only thing that I promote is just my own coaching, right? Obviously, there's certain supplements that 100% work, and I explain that to my clients. But in terms of like working with sponsors, no, I'm not looking to do any of that.
What belt do you have in jiu-jitsu?
Two stripe blue belt.
Blue belt with 2 stripes? That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's somewhere in the middle, right?
No, it's still a beginner, right? Like that comes after white belt. It's still considered a beginner, but obviously have somewhat more knowledge than the white belt.
You come from sambo and judo, right?
No, well, from wrestling,
Wrestling?
a little bit of wrestling. Yeah, I've done like so many sports, man. Like wrestling, kickboxing, karate. I've done a little bit too, right? But yeah, wrestling is very popular back in Bulgaria.
I like Behera. I think he's the best kickboxer. The guy that fought Israel. He's
Oh yeah,
fighting. He's fighting the Czech guy. That's gonna be a good fight.
yeah, that will be a good fight. I believe he's gonna win. Well, he won actually, no? Oh no, he's fighting Jerry Prohaska.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jerry is pretty crazy too.
yeah. That'll be a very good stand-up fight.
Oh yeah. You know, when Jerry prepares for his fights, he goes in the wilderness for 3 months, no people, fighting the trees there. He's a weirdo, but I think he's a real champion. He's dangerous. People underestimate him. I think he's a very strong fighter.
Yeah.
Both of them. This is going to be some exciting fights. Well, in closing, what would you like to share as final words? Maybe a word of advice. Is there any before we close? Is there any frustrating product that you have used or frustrating? Are you frustrated with certain brand or certain company right now?
No.
No, good experience all around.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. I believe that uh, I don't want to blame the consumers, but like we have to do our due diligence, right? Regarding anything you want to invest your hard-earned money into. And if you do your due diligence, you can definitely make better choices. So I don't want to like blast out a company because there are certain supplements that don't really work as advertised, but that's obviously the responsibility also of the consumer to get educated.
Whey protein or vegetable or plant protein?
Oh, whey protein isolates all day. It has all essential amino acids that plant-based protein does not have.
So definitely whey protein versus
Yeah,
plant.
yeah.
What's your favorite whey protein?
If I have to mention a brand, is going to be Gold Standard by Optimum Nutrition, simply because Optimum Nutrition and Universal are two brands I used to use even in Bulgaria. They're like really, really old school brands, bodybuilding brands that they were popular when I was a kid.
Mhm.
So I have stuck around with Optimum Nutrition Gold Standard. I believe their products are very good.
They're still consistent, huh?
Yeah, yeah. They're just like one of those brands that has reputation from really back in the day when bodybuilding first started, right? And they're still pretty successful. So I'm very loyal. That's the thing about me, is that even when I go to restaurants, if I like the food, I tend to go to the same places. I
Mm-hmm.
tend to vacation the same places, the same hotel all the time, because when I enjoy something and I truly like it, I'm a very loyal fan, if you want to put it out.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
the same way. I'm relational, and loyalty gives me goosebumps. I love loyalty.
yeah.
What are your core values besides loyalty?
Well, humility, number one, never having a never give up attitude, persistence, obviously loyalty, integrity.
Which one do you think is more important, loyalty or integrity?
I would say integrity, because if you have integrity, you're going to be loyal.
Yeah, I think integrity is loyalty to yourself. Kind of like
Yeah,
that.
that's true. That's a good way to put it.
Because sometimes when you're loyal, you could do things that cross with your integrity. Like your best friend kills somebody and tells you, "I got him in the trunk. Can you help me dig a hole?" That's loyalty. But integrity would be, "Hey, bro, let's go to the police. Let's do full confession. I'll take care of your kids while you're there. Probably get out a little earlier." That would be not the loyal thing to do, but it will be the integral thing. Is that how you would act in a situation like that?
Yeah, that's a very tough one, by the way. That's a very, like, if you would ask me that question like a few years ago, I would say that I would cover up for my friend. Uh, but now
But
being,
then you'll be going to jail when they find the body.
yeah, if you asked me that question before, I would cover for my friend. But now I would agree with you. I would
That's
agree with you that I would do the same thing, because, like, the thing is that I'm going to be held responsible before God too. So uh, that God comes first. Like, if you do something like that, obviously it's a crime and you have to suffer the consequence.
I remember that when I was dating my wife, and we did everything by the book. We were friends. We were dating. We wait until our first night. So we did everything in the purest way possible, and that was my question to her. And if she would have answered wrong, I wouldn't be with her. It's like, which one comes first, integrity or loyalty? Because if you live a life in kingdom principles, you can sleep well at night, even if you lose some friends and lose some,
I agree. Yeah.
but at least you didn't deserve yourself, by breaking your own principles. If you break your own principles, you lose your identity. Who are you now? That means you can break it again. So that's great conversation, brother. We can talk for hours. It's
Yeah.
such fun and pleasure to talk to you. But I know you're busy, and you'll be a guest again. Who knows? A few months, couple of years, and once when I think you're gonna hit million before you think. I think that this thing is gonna spread out as a wildfire. Take it as a prophetic word that it will be so soon. You'll be like, whoa! I thought it was gonna take 15 years, and look where we are now. So have a plan for what are you gonna do after the million? Maybe go for a billion. Make it a global goal. And I think there's something that you can do to intertwine both of your desires in your heart, and maybe you can do it for those that raise hands. Instead of, I love that you're respecting them, and this is my team. All of my team, I've got virtual assistants and people helping me out. All of my team are Christians, and they follow Jesus, but like we're not a Christian organization. I'm Christian. I But we don't separate our clients, and we don't judge what they believe in. So I think that you're doing the same thing. Like, you are Christian, but the Spartan Dad Project is not a Christian thing. So maybe for those that raise a hand, and if you open a door, be like, hey, in this door this is what we do. If you want to knock on the door, we're going to welcome you. And I think something special is hiding there. So you can combine both faith, mental state, mental strength. So important, right? Spiritual,
Yeah,
mental, body, spirit, and mind.
100%. Yeah, that's the great idea. Great suggestions.
Yeah, don't put it in their face like they do with the all the things that they're putting in our face right now, and they're forcing us to see some commercials and stuff,
Yeah.
and forcing our kids. But instead, when you notice that somebody has beliefs, you're like, hey, by the way, here's what we're doing over here. I don't offer this to everybody, but I noticed that you talk about God, and I noticed that you talk about stuff. So it's just a few of us for now. I think you would unlock superpower right there.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I do have actually a lot of Christian men in my program, but it's definitely something that I can incorporate.
Yeah, make a separate community, and then more and more people are going to be like, what do you guys do over there? What is that kingdom stuff that you do? Like, oh, that's only for special people. All
Yeah.
right, brother, much love and respect. I don't know when we're going to meet each other again, but maybe we'll go to one of these fights together, or who knows. Next time when I come to Florida, I'll definitely call you. And are you in St. Pete? Where are you at?
In Tampa, South
Tampa?
Tampa.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's beautiful out there. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
anytime,
definitely
man.
let you know.
Anytime you're in the area, let me know.
Yeah, and next time when you're in Chicago, I know you've been here before. Back to your stomping grounds. I'll show you around. Come back, let me know. And you have good memories from Chicago or no?
Yeah, I have good memories. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd love to hang out. But much love and respect. Keep rocking, keep inspiring people, keep leading by example, and God bless you.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you, brother. Thank you.
Make it a great one.
Thank you. You too.